On today's episode of JB and Company, we're here today with a guy who was a high school valedictorian, a Carnegie Mellon alum who graduated summa cum laude. Also, he went on to sustain a winning record, 34 years and counting, in the collegiate basketball world, all while being known as an offensive guru, a three-time Coach of the Year award recipient, and current men's basketball coach for the Santa Clara University Broncos. I'd like to welcome Coach Herb Sendek. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
Hey, my pleasure, JB. Great to be together with you.
That's great. That's great. Now I have to start with the big news. Your oldest daughter, Kristen, just had a newborn baby girl. One, congratulations. And two, can you tell us what that feeling is like?
Man, it is just incredible. My oldest daughter, Kristen, and her husband, Derek, had a baby girl on March 12th. They named her Andy. And we've only been able to see pictures, videos. You know, we've done some Zooms together. And we're looking forward for the first chance we get to go to Arizona so we can hold her and be together with her in person.
Yeah, well, that's great news. I hope you can get there soon. I'm very happy for you, Coach.
Thank you. No, it's exciting. And my wife, Melanie, she's, just dying not being able to, be together with Kristen and Andy. That's for sure.
I know she is, but I know she's excited. I know that first meeting will be great.
We're looking forward to it.
Now, Coach, I have to reminisce on the first memory that I have of you, which was right around the time that my junior season was wrapping up. You just had been announced the new men's basketball coach of Santa Clara. And I was kind of deciding whether I was going to stay at Santa Clara or transfer to another school. We met a few times, and you voiced your opinion on wanting me to stay. So that was great to hear. But you even took it a step further by taking a trip all the way to the Chicago area with your coaching staff to meet with my parents and my mentor and telling them why I should stay at Santa Clara. But there was something funny about that meeting that came out of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the fact that, we were going to use every advantage we had to try to keep you at Santa Clara. Obviously, you being the leading scorer in the history of the WCC, we could leave nothing to chance. And, the ace, as you know, that we had up our sleeve was the fact that your girlfriend was returning to Santa Clara. So if anything was able to give us a little hope and a little confidence, it was that fact. And as I've gotten to know her, I now know you weren't going anywhere.
Well, I appreciate you using that and using all tactics that you could to keep me there. The funny thing about that moment was that I think it was a situation where I knew I had a girlfriend, but I don't think anybody else in my family knew. So I think that's why they were caught off guard.
No. Now that you mention it, you're exactly right. And for a minute there, I was sweating because I knew I had blown your cover. And of course, trying to get you to stay, I didn't need to put you in a bad spot. But fortunately for me, you're a forgiving young man, and you overlooked that. And at the end of the day, you couldn't escape the fact that she was coming back to Santa Clara.
That's very true. I couldn't escape that fact. And at the end of the day, we all got to do what we got to do. So you did what you had to do, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
Hey, me too. My only regret, not to be ungrateful or selfish, is we only had 1 year together.
Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way. But it was a great 1 year for sure, and I'm glad that our relationship continues on to this day.
Thank you very much. I feel the same way, JB. And as you know, or at least I hope you know, that this entire Santa Clara University community absolutely loves you. They just have nothing but the greatest respect for you. So, you always have a home here, that's for sure.
I really appreciate that, Coach. And I want to flip verses, and I want to talk about how we're experiencing unprecedented times at the moment. We're being forced to stay inside of our homes, and our new normal is shaping into an unconventional way of us doing things. Can you talk a little bit about the effects that this pandemic has had on you? And can you also talk about how you found a way to remain productive during this time?
Yeah, first, it just very, very sad to see so many people suffering around the world, people who have lost their lives, people who have lost loved ones, people who are sick, not feeling well. And then when you look at the economic ramifications, people out of work, people not being able to pay their bills, living in a state of daily fear. And then, uncertainty tends to create great angst among all of us. And right now, even listening to the experts around the world, there's a tremendous amount of unknown and uncertainty. We're in this for an indefinite period of time, and we don't know what tomorrow looks like. So certainly it has forced me, and I'm sure many, many others, to be reflective, to be faith-centered, to make sure that, even during this difficult time, we count our blessings. Among all the people that are suffering around the world, I realize that I'm so much more fortunate, myself and my family right now. We have our health. From a professional standpoint, like so many others, I have an occupation that allows me to work from home, which I'm grateful for. It's not the same as being in the gym or the office, but we can get a lot done virtually right now.
Yeah.
And I'm taking the opportunity to continue to learn and, watch tape and get better as a coach within the confines that we have. But it's a difficult and challenging time, certainly unprecedented in our lifetime. And I guess you'd have to go back to the epidemic of 1918 for anything similar, notwithstanding the wars we've had in between.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you're remaining productive. And like you said, we've never seen anything of this magnitude. And to see the effect that it's had on many families throughout the world, and seeing that some families can't be with their family members who had to be taken to the hospital because you can't come in contact with them. So you see a lot of FaceTime calls being done, and you see, a lot of people passing away, which is a sad thing to see. But one thing we talked about off the record was just at some point, you kind of have to turn off the TV because it begins to be too much. It's great to be knowledgeable on what's going on. But like you said, there's just so many sad things going on at this moment, like to turn the TV off just for a while and to just breathe and kind of count your blessings is something that we all should do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to try to strike a balance. It's good to know what's going on in the world and be aware. But at the same time, you can't just be totally saturated and consumed with that, because there's other good things to think about. And there's other things that need attended to. And, the quality of all of our lives is directly reflected with the thoughts we allow in our mind. And so, be aware, be knowledgeable, know what's going on, but at the same time, don't dwell in it 24/7, because that probably won't lead to a real healthy place mentally.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to stay on the topic of the pandemic, but I want to gear it towards college basketball specifically. Do you see this pandemic affecting the future landscape of college basketball in any way?
Well, I definitely think it's going to have an impact on college basketball. In fact, it already has. So, this time of year, coaches are working with their players on development. Players are on campus and taking classes. We've already lost our spring recruiting opportunities, and it's likely we're going to lose our summer recruiting opportunities. So that means, for the next class, at least the class of 21, the evaluation opportunities have been drastically reduced. And the fall signing period obviously isn't that far away. And then you march into the summer with your own team. Once again, we don't know if we'll be able to work with them. Our team in particular had a international tour scheduled for August, which has been canceled. And then you fast forward to the start of the next school year, and nobody knows what that looks like yet. Will we be back on campus? Will football, basketball, and other sports be delayed, play a shortened season? And so once again, we're just back into the great unknown. And so, as you know, Coach John Wooden had a great saying, and we use it often in our program: do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And so we're just encouraging our players, even though some of them can only work out in their garage or in the, at the park down the street. to do what they can, even though they can't be in class, to do what they can online, to set up meetings with their teachers virtually. So like everybody, we're trying to adjust and make the best of a difficult situation.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, do what you got to do. Given the circumstances, we all have to find a way to come out on top of this. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about what the recruiting schedule looks like for you guys now? And do you guys talk to players through Zoom that you were thinking about recruiting now that you can't actually go visit them and their families or actually see them play for their AAU teams? Can you tell us how that works?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fortunately with technology now and Zoom, we're able to still communicate with recruits in addition to the normal phone calls. But everything is being done like that. Believe it or not, as I speak with you now in yet another Zoom meeting, before the pandemic, if you would have said to me, Herb, what's Zoom? I would have had no idea. And now in a matter of weeks, it's become the normal operating procedure for how you talk to people, how you do business. And so things have changed dramatically, literally in less than 2 months.
And me and you are on the same boat. I don't think I had an idea of what Zoom was before this pandemic, and now it's become the most used platform in the whole world.
Yeah, I was just catching on to FaceTime phone calls, and here we go with Zooms.
Yeah. That's about what my parents are on right now. I'm still teaching them how to use Instagram. So the fact that they've elevated their use of technology because of this pandemic is great for me.
That's going to be one of the silver linings. We're going to be a more technologically advanced society.
Exactly. So you mentioned your team and how you guys are staying connected through the Zoom platform. Are there any special activities also going on your Zoom meetings that you guys do?
Yeah, we try to have a Zoom every Monday, and most of the time, the majority of the Zoom is spent just connecting and talking with each other. So we may have one player, for example, responsible for asking us a question. So an example of a question we had, if you could have dinner with anybody, who would it be? Just light things to kind of get us connecting and laughing and talking with each other. The other thing we'll do on our Zoom meetings is obviously, just go through any announcements that need to be made, especially in the academic arena. And then what we've started to do recently, as it's become obvious that this isolation is going to continue for some time, is we started to have guests on our Zoom, bring in people that can share things with our team that will be of value to them. And that's been really good for us as well. The other thing we're doing is, the guys will post different physical challenges. So for example, today, JB, you may post, okay, everybody by the end of the day, do 50 push-ups. And then you're going to call out the next guy in the team, and, you're going to ask, Joseph, you're up next, and Joseph, he's going to say, okay, everybody's going to run 2 miles today, post your time. Just something like that to keep us going together. So we're trying to be creative. And then in addition to the Zooms, just staying connected on the phone on a regular basis, the best we can.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear those challenges that the players are incorporating between themselves. I think is a good measure to keep them competitive and to keep that edge strong. I know I can personally speak to the fact that I know professional teams around the league are hosting Zoom meetings and even having yoga sessions on those Zoom meetings. So that's just a way for them to stay connected and just to see each other face to face. So I think it's really cool what you guys are doing to stay connected during this time and to keep that camaraderie strong.
Right. And I think that's incumbent upon not just basketball teams, but everybody, because that's one of the hardest things about what we're going through, the isolation that leads in many cases to loneliness, especially right now if you're isolated by yourself instead of with a family. that could be very difficult. And there's so many things right now like that are catalysts for, depression, anxiety, but the ability to stay connected, if not physically, in a spiritual way with each other is really important.
Well, that's great. Let's switch gears and focus on the NCAA for a minute. They just came out with some big news not too long ago, which has brought in a lot of questions and controversy, considering the fact that they're now letting student athletes profit off of their name, images, and likeness. This has been something that many professional athletes and even SCU alum, current California Governor Gavin Newsom, have been vocal about and have been an advocate for. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think it was inevitable. For many, it was too long in coming.
Yeah.
But going back for years, Sonny Vaccaro has been advocating this and really been a pioneer, and partnered with Ed O'Bannon in the court case to try to see this to fruition. And so all of a sudden, different legislators around the country decided to take matters into their own hands, and different states started passing laws. And I think that really spurred the NCAA into action. And so I think, for the first time, they have a working framework, but now the real challenge is the details and the implementation. So even though a lot of progress has been made to this end, and people recognized the latest action by the board, the next step, which I think is in January, is going to be a key. The NCAA's talked about putting guardrails on the name, image, and likeness legislation. So it remains to be seen what those guardrails look like. And then the actual implementation of this program is, I think, going to be somewhat challenging, given the guardrails, given the parameters of NCAA athletics. So progress continues to be made, some big steps here lately, but we're still several steps away from fluid implementation.
And that's a great point. I think when I saw the news, that was the first thing I thought about. I started thinking about, okay, what are the details? Because when you just, see that news came out, you kind of think to yourself, and I'm like, this could be somewhat of a murky situation for athletes moving forward. How are they going to brand themselves? They can't have agents. So, you start to think of all these questions of how this is really going to be implemented over the course of time. So definitely interested in learning more about that moving forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious about. And I think it's a challenge. I don't think it's a layup. I do think, though, we know that something is going to come out of it. Yeah. I just don't know what that ultimately looks like. Given the first step, what are those guardrails they're talking about? And then second, what does the implementation and the actual practice look like? Yeah. And then what are the consequences of that, the unintended consequences of that? And so it'll be interesting as this continues to march forward.
Will definitely be interesting. Another thing that is interesting during this time is we're starting to see the emergence of top high school recruits bypass college and go straight to the G League and taking that professional route. I know 3 players in particular who have recently made this move. I want to ask you, what is your take on this, and do you see this becoming somewhat of a trend in the future?
Sure. At the end of the day, it's not that many players doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with them exercising their rights and freedom to do that if it makes sense for them and their families. College isn't necessarily the best track for every player or every non-player. Okay. What I would be concerned about, though, is if the message is to our young men who are in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade that you don't have to go to college. You can go and play professional basketball. And they presuppose that that's the path that they can take. Therefore, they neglect their studies. And ultimately, they're not one of those very select handful of guys who can actually make that jump. And now they have neglected their studies with a very presumptuous decision. And now they're left hanging. Yeah. I'm still, for everybody, even those who are able to go on and, play professionally, I'm a big advocate of education. And not just for what you learn in the books, but, some of the socialization advantages. But having said that, I get it. I mean, college is not for everybody. It's not the best track for everybody. I mean, we've had presidents of the United States who weren't college graduates, and we've had leaders in industries who didn't graduate from college, who dropped out of college. There's a lot of different paths, and so I don't think it's certainly not for me to judge if that's the right path or not the right path. That's an individual choice, a family choice, but it's ultimately going to be for a very, very small population compared to all the people who play basketball. And I just don't want our young people jumping the gun thinking they're in that select pool and therefore using that as an excuse to not take care of business academically, when they're in junior high school and high school.
I mean, you bring up a great point. Everybody has their own path, but like you said, college basketball is hard, and I'm here to speak for all the basketball players across the world. Even when you get to that professional level, it's very difficult to make yourself a prominent player in the league. So I don't want all the players to go out there and be misled and thinking because they see a select few of these players making this move, thinking they can also do the same. So anywhere that I can educate players when they come to me and ask questions, I try to give them the best advice to steer them in the best direction. For those select group of players that do have the opportunity to do that, congratulations to them. And I hope they're able to, support their families as soon as that starts happening and that they continue to develop when they take that route. But for those that do go to college or thinking about skipping college, I want to be here to tell them, look, college is a great time to be alive, the social aspect, but also the learning, the education will take you a long way. And one thing that I know you always try to teach us and that we hear a lot in basketball is that the basketball can only dribble for so long. At some point, you're going to have to hang them up and you're going to have to do something else. And you want to make sure that you have the background of education to move forward with whatever it is that you like to do besides basketball.
Yeah, and it still remains to be seen how many of the guys that will take the G League route will ultimately play in the NBA, and then of those guys, how many will have, sustained or prolonged careers? We don't know the answers to those questions yet. So, some will progress and make it, but there'll be some who don't. Just like in baseball, when so many guys go the minor league route, AA or AAA ball, there's some guys that get called up to the majors and go on to have great careers, but there's a lot of guys who never make it out of minor league baseball.
Definitely some things that remain to be seen. But I do also want to add that with the select group of players that are taking this route, I do believe that the G League is allowing them the opportunity to finish their education or to start their education and finish their education, but obviously in a way where they can do it online because they plan to take these players and start a base in Los Angeles where they can develop them throughout this year of development until the NBA draft the following year.
The one thing, Jared, that I'm curious about, though, development is a word that is used often, but it means
Yeah.
different things to different people. And can you ultimately develop as a basketball player without competing and playing in games that really matter?
Mm-hmm.
Development isn't just working out with your trainer, working
Yeah.
out 1 versus 0, playing a pickup game or playing in a league where, if we win, great. If we don't win, great. I'm competing with the guys on my team as much as I am the guys on the other team, for opportunities to move up.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
know so on a G League team, for example, yeah, you may be trying to win the G League championship, but nobody knows who wins the G League championship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the guard that you're playing in the backcourt together with, he's a competitor as much as he is a teammate. He's competing with you
Mm-hmm.
to be that guy that the NBA calls up.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you ultimately have a comprehensive development when you don't go to college and all the games you're playing don't really matter?
Mm-hmm.
And you're competing on your own team. It's kind of like, in high school when we go evaluate players at basketball camp.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are actually on the camp team competing against each other to
Yeah.
catch the coach's eye.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, development means, to really fully develop, you got to play in competitive, tough games where the outcome matters,
Yeah.
like it does,
It's a huge part of it.
in
Yeah.
college basketball. You can only develop so much, I think, without that. So
Yeah.
maybe that'll be interesting to see how they address that and how they try to incorporate that into the development.
Yeah, that'd definitely be interesting. And of course, we wish the best to those that were able to take that step this year. And I think this conversation is good because it gives somebody who's out there thinking about this route, maybe they come across this video and, they're hearing people from both sides. They're hearing us talk about both sides. We're not on one side or the other, but we're just laying out the facts of the
Right.
unknown and the uncertainty. So I think that'll be good for them to hear this.
Yeah, and there's not going to be one right answer for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for non-basketball players, college isn't necessarily the best path to take. It is for some.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I want to switch gears. I want to talk about you specifically, the great coach that you've been. Can you talk to us a little bit about the qualities that attribute to the success that you've had throughout your career, and being a winning coach throughout that time as well?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about people.
Yeah.
You look at any one individual, and you need to quickly look at the people around him or her. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And so for me, I've been blessed to have great coaches and teachers and mentors in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been a part of great coaching staffs. And then I've been, blessed and privileged to coach great players, great people. Mm-hmm. And so at every level, ever since I've been a young boy, I just have been surrounded by, amazing, giving people, and so that's made, my path, a lot easier.
Well, that's good to hear. And I think that young coaches who are on the up and coming will definitely be able to hear that and know that they need to associate themselves around the right people, and knowing that staying connected with inside the coaching community is something that will propel them forward.
Absolutely. And ultimately that's what makes it fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And you talked about being around a lot of great coaching staffs. And with the longevity that you've had, you've also had the opportunity to be around a lot of great players, not only coach, but maybe coach against. But one player that comes to mind is James Harden, who you coached during your tenure at Arizona State. Now, James has gone on to become an exceptional NBA player and a Kia NBA Most Valuable Player Award recipient. Can you talk to us a little bit about his talent level and what you saw in his mindset while you were coaching him?
Yeah, to me, James always made the right play. He never predetermine what he was going to do. Mm. And although he was a prolific scorer and has become even more so as his career has unfolded, it was never about how many points he scored or how many shots he took. It was playing the right way. And in retrospect, I think that was a big reason why he became the third pick in the draft by Oklahoma City, because at the time they already had Durant and Westbrook, and I don't know that they needed a third high volume shooter or even scorer at that point.
Yeah.
And so I think James's team-centered mindset allowed him to move up several spots in the draft to Oklahoma City. But for us, he was the same, whether he dropped 40-some like he did one day against UTEP, or whether he scored in single digits like he did one game against Oregon State when they decided they were going to trap him every time he had the ball, no matter where it was on the court. He just read the defense, made the right play, didn't have a predetermined agenda. And then as you look at the way his career is unfolded, going back to when he was a sophomore in high school, he wasn't even considered the best player on his high school team at that point.
Wow.
And then he came to college and had 2 really good years for us. Started at Oklahoma State, didn't start right away, came off the bench for the Thunder. And now he is here, arguably, putting up Wilt Chamberlain-like scoring numbers. So you have to look at that timeline and say, one of the things that he's been able to do is improve year in, year out. He's had a steady progression of improvement. He didn't stop improving when he finished high school. He didn't stop improving at the end of his college career. He didn't stop improving, after his 3rd NBA season. Every year, he's been able to take it to another level, so to speak.
Well, it's great to hear that. I remember you giving me that same exact answer when I asked you when you first got to Santa Clara, because I was trying to pick your brain and looking at players like that are in the NBA. You having the chance to coach them, of course, I wanted to learn as much as I can. And I think you helped implement that inside of me as I was playing for you, telling me to, don't make up your mind on what you want to do. Just attack, and the defense will ultimately tell you what it is that you're supposed to do. Either they're going to stop you, or either they're not going to stop you and you just take it all the way. So I think that was a big lesson that I learned from you. And I think it's something that we see in James Harden's game today, even though he's arguably one of the best one-on-one player in the league right now. You see him when the defense stops him, he dishes it off for a lob to his big man. He throws it to PJ Tucker in the corner. He's ready to make, whatever he has to do based on what the defense does to him. And as we've seen, a lot of defensive have been thrown at him.
Yeah, there's kind of 2 parts to that. First is the willingness to do it, which we just addressed. A lot of guys, they're not willing to do that because their basketball identity is centered on only scoring, only shots. So there's a willingness to do it. And then maybe the more difficult part is the ability to do it, to have that kind of vision and make split-second decisions, to maybe be 1 step ahead even before you catch the ball, knowing where everybody is on the floor and what to anticipate and expect. So he not only had the willingness, the unselfish heart to be that kind of player, but he also has a unique ability, a feel, a gift of vision and anticipation to actually make those plays. Because as you know, as a player, I mean, it's one thing to push pause on a film and say, hey, you see this, you see what you could have done, or, you see who was open here. But to do that in a split second in the heat of battle is a whole nother level.
It's a whole nother level. Well, that's great. And we definitely see that in his game today. So congratulations on the work that you were able to do with him. I know for players, it's really all about the players and what they do to better propel themselves moving forward. But we definitely have to give coaches credit for being able to manage great players, which is kind of what I want to talk about a little bit about James Harden. Every coach has maybe 1 or 2 great players on their team, And you've probably had great players on your North Carolina State teams, your University of Miami, Ohio teams. Can you talk about what it is that you try to do with the best player on your team and how you manage them and how you talk to them differently as opposed to the rest of the team, considering that they're your leader?
Just make sure they're on the bus before you pull out of the parking lot. You know, don't leave.
I like that.
Don't leave without them. You know, that's really important. You know, you never knew that that year we were together. You know, I made sure before the bus ever left the Levy lot that I looked over my shoulder. Jared's here. Okay, let's go. You know, that's probably the key to the whole thing.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you said that because I swear I can remember the high school days, and I noticed that my high school coach, and as you know, the coaches sit in the front of the bus. One thing I noticed right before we took off, he always turned his head and looked in the back. And I never knew if he was looking at me, but I got that vibe that we were making eye contact. And he did it before every road trip. And, you know, I think that's what he was doing.
Yeah, no question. You know, players are always talking about a coach having confidence in them and stuff like that. But, you know, it's important to know, like, your players give you confidence as a coach too. It's a two-way street. But I think, you know, the most to answer your question a little more, you know, sincerely, I think the best scenario is if your best player allows you to coach him, then you can really make some ground. You know, if your best player doesn't allow you to coach him, that's a problem. You know, and I also really like, you know, what Coach Jeff Van Gundy always says, you know, your best player has to have an intolerance for everything that gets in the way of winning, you know, because that then will help hold everybody in the program accountable. But if your best player, like Tim Duncan, for example, did for those many years with the Spurs, he allowed Coach Popovich to coach him. Or Tony Parker, he allowed Coach Popovich to coach him by all accounts, right? Then I think that really strengthens the team in just so many ways. And the converse is true if that's not the case.
And you see the great things that can come out of that. So that's a great point.
That's right.
Now, Coach, in hopes we get back to a sense of normalcy, whenever that may be, what is something that you would like to accomplish once you get back on the job, and something you would like to accomplish in your personal life?
Yeah, no, I just will be able to go back and give everybody a hug, you know, and just be together. You know, just the fact of being together is so priceless. You know, I think that's one of the great gifts we have in team sports, that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's hard for so many players, you know, once their career is over, all of a sudden, you know, they don't have that unique team that we have in sports, and they miss that. I think that's one reason so many players want to get into coaching, just to be like in that locker room, you know, together with the guys again. So I'm looking forward to that, you know, very much, just being back together, you know, with our team. You know, we're a team, you know. I'm looking forward to that. And then obviously, you know, just getting back to work and, you know, I like the direction of our program. I love the guys on our squad, and, you know, just want to get back to doing what we do.
That's great. I can't agree with you more. I think reuniting with the people we love is the main thing moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, I'll end with this, Coach. I want to ask you, what is one of the greatest lessons you've learned in life, and how has it helped you moving forward?
Yeah, I could take that question and go so many different directions. I tend to be introspective by nature. But for me, as much as it's been a journey to learn to be a better leader, a better teammate, a better coach, a better communicator, maybe more than all those things, it's been a lifelong journey to better know myself and to master myself. like we talked about earlier in our conversation today, a person's quality of life is directly proportional to the quality of his or her thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ability to control your own mind is a lifelong process. But that, more than circumstances, sometimes can determine how you live.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've tried to better understand myself so that I can have a greater mastery over how I think, what I think about, what I don't think about.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm doing a good job with those things, then
Mm-hmm.
your own, like the old, I think it was Milton who might have said, the mind is a powerful place. It can make
Mm-hmm.
a heaven of a hell or a hell of a heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And two people can experience the exact same thing and have very different reactions to it,
Yeah.
very different responses.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to respond the best way possible, prevents you from feeling, no, that doesn't prevent, like I said, just enhances your own quality of life.
Mm-hmm. And you talk a lot about thoughts. I want to give a quick shout out to my barber, just because of the fact that he's more than just a barber. He's actually the guy who kind of gets my thoughts in order when it comes to basketball and everything else in life. He tells me that you can control your own thoughts. You're the master of your own thoughts. You create what will happen to you in life. If you're thinking negative thoughts all the time, that's going to have, a bad impact on you. If you're thinking good thoughts and you're in the right mind frame, a lot of good things will happen to you in life, and you'll start to notice that.
Right. And so when we talk about thoughts, we often focus on our thoughts in response to something that has happened.
Mm-hmm.
But you make a great point. Our thoughts also create intentions.
Mm.
And
Yes.
there's a great man, Dr. Wayne Dyer, celebrated author and speaker, who wrote a book, The Power of Intention, of how through your thoughts, you can actually attract certain things to your life.
Yes.
If you have good thoughts, you're going to attract good things.
Yeah.
And if you have bad thoughts, once again, the converse is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts not only, influence intentions,
Mm-hmm.
but they also, you can respond to situations.
Mm-hmm.
So on both ends of the spectrum, they're important.
Yep. The Power of Intention, everybody. Everybody go get that book and read
Dr.
that during
Wayne
quarantine.
Dyer, great book.
You heard it here first. All right. Just to go along with the lesson that you taught us, I think I want to share one lesson with you, which I'm sure you've either shared with your players before or you've heard it before. And I think I first heard it in college with basketball, but it applies to everything in life. And it's that life is 1% what happens to you and 99% how you react to it. So basically, it's just saying that there's always going to be something that happens to you in life. Life is not always going to go your way, but how you react to it and how you move forward from that point on is the only thing that matters. And I think that's been something in my life that I abide by and that has carried me to where I want to be, because I decide that when I hit a wall in life, I don't stay down. I keep going and I figure out how to get over that wall and continue going where I want to get. So I think that's something that is huge for not only athletes, but for people in life to take that message and use it any way they want to get to where it is they want to be.
Amen. I mean, that's perfectly said. I agree with everything you said, JB.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's as good as it gets.
All right. And on that note, we'll close it out. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of JB and Company. That's Coach Sendek, who was here with us today. Thank you for joining us today, Coach.
Great to be with you. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay strong.
Thank you, Coach. Everybody, look out for the Broncos this upcoming season. Coach Sendek and the AD, Renee Baumgartner, are doing a great job over there. So definitely stay tuned. And like Coach said, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay together. And by together, I mean stay 6 feet apart.
That's right.